Welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding podcast, uncovering authentic Italian food. I'm your host, Robert Campana, and join me as we delve into the rich heritage of genuine Italian food, exploring its legends, history, and traditions. Through important tips and insightful interviews with industry professionals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of authentic Italian food. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stop Italian Sounding show, uncovering authentic Italian food. So, today we have a very interesting interview coming up with a startup company from Italy called CulturaPaths. And it's about root tourism. So I'm looking very much forward to having this conversation with Riccardo, with Viola, and with Silvia, who I've known for some time. We've actually done some work together in the past. So again, I'm looking forward to having Silvia back on the show and to welcoming Riccardo and Viola. So I want to kind of just get right into the conversation and introduce our guest for today. So Riccardo, welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding Uncovering Authentic Italian Food show. If you could just take a second, please, and introduce yourself and tell us basically what CulturaPaths is all about.
Thank you, Robert. I'm very happy to be here with you, with Viola and Silvia. Me and Viola, we are the co-founders of CulturaPaths. We are here with Silvia, which is a member of the board, and she's in charge of helping us to develop our business in the Americas and the US. And she's the founder of an amazing company called Renaissance Minds, focused on arts and culture. Coming to CulturaPaths is a startup that we founded, me and Viola, last year, and is focused on what is called roots tourism. I think that roots tourism is something that is going to become one of the main trends in terms of tourism for Italian Americans and for all the people that have Italian descent worldwide. Why we started this company? Because we traveling, me and Viola, we found out that there were a lot of people that were like coming from Italy with Italian origins, with Italian descent, and we found that there was a very deep connection from this kind of, people that established their life abroad with Italian traditions, and there were like this will from us to reconnect these people with their roots and with their tradition and with their origins. So we started this startup. CulturaPaths is basically a travel tech startup, because basically what we do is organizing these kind of roots trips in Italy for our clients. We start with the genealogical research, and after the genealogical research, we organize tailor-made travels in Italy, and we bring our customers to the places where they are originating from, where there are like sometimes there are still parents alive, where they can see the streets of their ancestors, they can breathe the life of their ancestors.
Very, very interesting. And I, like you said before, I think the roots tourism is something that's kind of going to get bigger in the next few years, and especially in the Italian American community, because we tend to be very proud of our heritage. We want to know where our families come from. We want to know the traditions. We want to know the history. We want to know the food, because the food is definitely a big aspect of things, and it's something that I also want to talk about today. But before I do talk about the food, I wanted to give also Viola and Silvia a chance kind of to briefly introduce themselves to our guests that are listening, and then we'll get into the food aspect as well, how it connects to the roots tourism. So Viola, if you want to take less than 60 seconds.
Less than 60. I'm great at that. Okay, so thank you. Buongiorno a tutti. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having us. So as Riccardo was saying, we met a bit more than a year ago, and we founded together this adventure. I've been working in tourism for the past 7 years, and I am myself a migrant. I'm Italian. I lived in Italy until I was 24, and then I migrated abroad. I lived in Czech Republic, and then I've been living for the past 14 years in France. And even though we are very close to Italy, I've been struggling also to preserve my Italian identity and transmit it and transfer it to my kids as well.
So you know exactly what it's like.
Exactly. Yeah. Despite the fact that we are very, very close and next to Italy.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're just right on the other side of the I mean, you could drive. I think you said you're in Marseille. So you're
Marseille,
not too
exactly.
far. You're not too far.
No, I'm around 7 hours drive from Bergamo, which is my hometown, which is about 50 kilometers from Milan. So it's quite close, and I do come back often. But still, my life is here now, so I can see how difficult it can be to preserve certain tradition, and also for what concerns the culinary experience and the whole system.
Exactly, exactly. And Sylvia, I'd like to welcome you back to the show as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Robert. It's great to connect again. And just for those that are listening, so I have my own consulting firm, which is a business marketing and public relations agency. And as part of my own identity, I founded Renaissance Minds coming up on 8 years ago as a passion project. It's a lifestyle and culture and arts newsletter and brand, and really a way for me to connect with the love I have for the origin of things. So when Ricardo and Viola reached out to me last year, I found this to be the perfect fit and the perfect outlet for us to work together, in particular, given the fact that I am here in New York, born and raised New Yorker. My father is born in Italy. He's from Sicily. And as you know, Robert, huge Southern Italian community here in the tri-state area, particularly. But one of the most important things about my upbringing was that my parents were very focused on always preserving our origins, because it is part of our identity, and it's something that that I love to write about, to discuss, and now have passed on to my children. So I love the fact that both Viola and Ricardo are finding this authentic way and have this new platform that is really meant to bring that to life for so many that are longing for their ancestry.
And I think that's very exciting. It's a very good thing because we talk about our ancestry, we talk about tradition, we talk about history, talk about identity, and like I mentioned a few minutes ago, food as well. So Viola, I wanted to ask you a question. How is food connected to identity, especially for people with Italian heritage?
I think that food is definitely one of the most durable carriers of cultural identity and tradition, because it doesn't necessarily need to be written. You know, of course, you have recipes, but it doesn't need a language. It's a language on its own, actually. And I like to compare it to a language, especially when we talk about Italy, because you know how in Italy you have this huge variety of dialects in every region. And sometimes if two people from the same region speak a very, very original dialect, they might not be able to understand each other. It's a bit the same, or in terms of variety, for food tradition. So every region and every city and village in the region has its own tradition and traditional products and dishes. And so especially for those who migrated and who had to leave behind their things that were familiar to them, on top of their family, of course, but also the land, the products, and everything. That was sometimes the only way that they could have to remember their own family and their own origins when they were, they had to integrate themselves into a new culture, into a new language, new habits. That was the thing that really, the thread that they kept and that they managed to keep with not such a big effort, but in a very natural way with their own country of origin.
Exactly. Food plays a huge, huge role. So is that why you think food is often one of the strongest connections that people have to their family history? Is because when they would go to other countries, that's kind of the bond that they have. Is that what you think, more or less?
Exactly, because food, it's not like preserving the language. Sometimes you find people that have completely lost Italian, they don't speak Italian anymore. It wasn't transferred to generation from generation, maybe because also they wanted their kids and their children to integrate better into the society. But food is a necessity, is a primal need, and that's why it doesn't need so much effort in most cases to preserve the tradition. And because a family keeps making dinner, keeps preparing lunch, and they keep perpetrating not all of the traditions that they had, because of course they included and added new recipes or products or ingredients from the country that they actually live in today. But it's something that you keep repeating. It's an action that you keep repeating, preparing food. And I think that's why it also has this emotional layer, as you were saying, this bond with your country of origin and your roots. So that's why I think it's so important.
Exactly. And your case is quite interesting because you lived in Italy and then you left Italy and now you live in France. So I think you identify quite well with what you just said. Can you offer any personal type of, like you said you have kids, so I'm assuming that you do that as well to kind of keep that flame alive, more or less, that desire of Italianità in a way.
I do, and I also can see, like, when I first arrived here, I had been living in the Czech Republic. In the Czech Republic, they have a completely different food tradition. So when I came back, when I decided to move to France, I found some things that were very familiar and they were very similar and made me feel more at home compared to where I was living before. But there were also something that really kind of shocked me. For example, I expected French people to cook a lot because, we talk a lot about French cuisine and how French food is absolutely great. Actually, they have a completely different approach to food and to cooking, because I pretty soon found out that people don't really cook a lot here. Families don't really cook. They don't have this tradition of a huge meal or even of a small meal, as I did have in my family, and as I do try to keep having as a tradition with my kids. So we stay at table. They help me, even though they're very young, because they are 3.5 and 5.5. They start helping me baking and preparing food sometimes. But I could really see this difference of how food here, it's so codified, because you have amazing restaurants and you have a technical level in patisserie and certain restaurants and chefs. While in Italy, even though we have, of course, lots of chefs and restaurants that are very refined and very codified, and they experiment as well, you have this basic difference where in France, the professional kitchen has often been, or historically has been, considered a point of reference of correct cooking, while in Italy, even the most avant-garde chefs, they tend to work on the basis or rework and propose and innovate on something that started in their own family. So I think this is a huge tradition, huge.
That is, and that's very interesting insight as well too. I wanted to ask, do your kids also speak Italian?
They do. They are bilingual. Yes, my
Perfect.
husband is Italian too, so we speak Italian at home, and they learn French in school.
And that's another connection to Italy when it comes to people who are Italian descendancy born outside of Italy. I'd like to also give that question to Sylvia as well too, being an Italian American. So oftentimes Italian Americans do not speak Italian. But they grew up with food and they grew up with all the different types of traditions, often from Southern Italy, but not only. So Sylvia, why do Italian recipes often survive longer than language or even family stories in Italian communities abroad? I think you could provide pretty good insight on that.
Well, I think, one of the things that tied all of the Italian Americans together through the generations have been those family recipes. And, everyone needs food to survive, connects through food. The Italian Americans are very much proud of that very unique identity. And as Viola highlighted, it is a culture that is really built in many ways around its regional traditions from their small towns, the areas that they're from. And so when the Italians started to migrate into other areas, what they held on to were their dialects, were their recipes, their Sunday dinners. And it's really, something that has thrived in the community here in particularly in the US. Unfortunately, in many cases, the languages have gotten lost. There has been, the passing on of dialects, which is, why they say that the Italian dialects are spoken more in the U.S. and Canada and Argentina than they are in Italy itself, right? We've all heard that, but it's something very, very important, that it has really created this sense of community. And for those that have lost the language elements, at least through food and recipes, it brings them closer to their identity. And I've been very fortunate because of the fact that my parents were very focused on us learning the real language, the Italian language. I was raised in a trilingual home, but I also was longing to learn the Sicilian dialect, which my grandmother spoke to me in, and that was very important for me. And my parents, I think, growing up, didn't always understand it because they were teaching me the real Italian, they were teaching me the real Spanish, Castilian, but with the identity of the community that I was living in, when everybody spoke the Sicilian dialect, that was important to me. And so we treated it like a separate language, and I learned it through my grandmother, and it's something I still use today. My husband, his parents are also from Sicily, and so it's that sense of connectivity. And but the recipes are a way for everyone to kind of give back to their communities, and I'm also hopeful that more people do what I do in encouraging my kids to learn the language, because, as we know, it's so important.
It's very important. Very, very important. Very important. And you're lucky enough to have grown up in that atmosphere, in that environment. So do you think that people often, like going back to the food conversation, that people abroad, Italian Americans abroad, often discover that the food they grew up with eating is different than what their ancestors actually eat in Italy, or ate in Italy, I should say?
Yes. One of the biggest things I get asked often when somebody is going to Italy for the first time is, the food in Rome was very different, or in Veneto, or in Milan, and that's when I really have to explain the fact that the cuisine in Italy is very regional. And Robert, you and I talk about it all the time. And so when people come to this country or migrated, they've held on to their own spin on certain recipes, not only from the actual region, for instance, Sicily, the largest island in the Mediterranean, and tons of regions, and there's tons of different ways of doing certain foods. Even the arancini, they're done a little bit differently in Catania than they are in Palermo, right? And so
they are even called differently, because you can call them arancina or arancino.
Exactly. There's debates, right? So you took the words out of my mouth, Viola, right? And it's interesting because even my parent, my father was born in Provincia Agrigento. My in-laws are born in Provincia di Palermo, and they make their pasta al forno a bit different than our pasta al forno, right? And it's almost these interesting debates. And so when they go to Italy, when folks that haven't grown up with that visit Italy for the first time and realize how regional the food is and how deep the cuisine is, it's fascinating to them.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And that's, I would say, one of the main reasons why Italian cuisine was recently recognized as UNESCO Intangible World Heritage, which is an enormous deal, not only in the culinary world, but also from an identity point of view, when it comes to Italy and their regional identity. So why is that such an important milestone in your opinion? I'll start with Viola, and then we could pass it around to everybody else.
I think, like, I when I learned about it, I was, of course, definitely, this is absolutely the best food that you could ever taste in the world. Then I digged a bit into it to understand a bit more what exactly had been listed as, intangible cultural heritage. And I found out, and for me, it was kind of a surprise. I didn't expect it, but it's not just a single dish or techniques or the ingredients, the fact they're local or seasonal. It's the whole culinary system. It's really the whole system, because in Italy, cooking food, cuisine, it's a communal activity. And it's a moment of sharing within the family, of transferring recipes from one generation to another. And it's recognized by UNESCO as a living system of knowledge transfer. And this, for me, it's so powerful. And I can see it in my own personal experience, because I can see what I started cooking recently, that was caponata di melanzane. It was one of the dishes that my grandparents used to make. I have some Sicilian blood in my veins as well. And
Yeah, I was going to say that's Sicily.
my origins are scattered around Italy a bit, and I can see, like, they're not here anymore, unfortunately, but I still cook things, and I still cook them in a specific way that it's their way. And when I make parmigiana di melanzane and I make it my own way, which is the way I was taught it had to be made, and I talk about it with other people from Campania, for example, they criticize me and they say, no, that's not the right way to make it. You have to actually do it like that. And then I talk with someone from Calabria. No, absolutely. You need to add that and that and that. And so I can really see the idea of the living system of knowledge transfer. And this sentence really struck me, because it's so true. And I think that it's so powerful.
It is. Indeed, it is. Riccardo, I'd like to involve you also on the UNESCO topic before we move on. So why is it such an important milestone in your opinion, and especially how it plays into the, roots tourism and so on and so forth?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, the fact that UNESCO it is recognizing Italy on this intangible thing, it is very important, because the food is not just in Italy. It's not just the moment of eating. I mean, it's not just eating things. It is the whole moment of the family around the table. It's memories. I mean, every Italian can tell you that he remembers perfectly grandmother cooking something or teaching how to make pasta, and it is beyond food. It is beyond the resources. It is beyond the fact that you are eating something. It is the whole moment, and it is very, very important for us. And I think it's one of the things that make Italian food something that connects not only people around the world, but also connects people of different ages. I mean, the best memories that we have with for example, that I have in my personal experience with my grandmother, that now she's almost 100 years old, I mean, she was cooking like the cotoletta, that is a typical Italian Milanese food, because, yeah, I'm from Milan. And I remember the smell of the cotoletta and the risotto alla milanese that she was cooking. And these memories are something that, yes, it is intangible, but it's something that is also a memory that you will remember forever. And I think, and I'm sure that people that immigrated are still are still remembering that smell, that when they come back in Italy, they can find.
Exactly. Yes. You can never forget that smell. That's certain. Sylvia, from your perspective as an Italian American, UNESCO recognizing Italian cuisine as intangible world heritage. From your point of view, why is that such an important milestone, especially when it plays into the role of Italian identity abroad?
I was fascinated by it. First of all, I've always loved visiting every UNESCO World Heritage Site, and then to receive this intangible honor and recognition was so well deserved, because as an Italian American, I could tell you that here in the US, everywhere you travel, of course, there's Italian restaurants, but I travel a lot globally, and there's an Italian restaurant or an Italian chef in nearly every country in the world, which is not something that any other cuisine can say. And I also think, to Viola's point, it's because it's a broader system and a broader culture around it, and something that sometimes Americans don't always understand until they go to Italy and they understand the unspoken rules. Enjoying the meal, lingering over the meal, not being rushed out of a restaurant, not walking around with your coffee cup. I mean, everything from your breakfast, your colazione, to the aperitivo hour, to il dolce. There's rules. And there was an article years ago that I remember reading in the Financial Times that talked about the Ministry of Food in Italy and the culture around it, and that fascinated me because it's not something that Americans have always thought about, and I love that. When you go to Italy, they're compared to other countries in Europe, you don't see as many fast food restaurants, right? You start, they're creeping up here and there, but nothing like, I remember, once being shocked when I was in Madrid to know how many there were around the major cities, right? And I think it's because they've really done this incredible job, and it was worth the recognition of UNESCO of preserving that communal system and the culture of it.
I had the same exact impression when I was in Madrid. I thought the same exact thing about, and I love it's a beautiful city. But the amount of fast food restaurants, I'm not saying that they don't exist also in Italy too, but like you said, they preserve the food traditions and culinary heritage a lot better in Italy, I would say. And that's one reason that they differ from so many countries. Another reason I would say is also the concept of seasonality too. So I know here in the US, we don't really talk much about seasonality when it comes to food. So maybe this will be a better question for Viola living in France when it comes to seasonality. So compared to the concept of seasonality in Italy, what say you?
To this point, I must say that I grew up in a family where my mom has always been very, very strict on seasonality of things. So I could see that it wasn't the case for everyone else or all of my friends, but for me, tomatoes were in summer, zucchini as well, eggplant too, while other, and you were not supposed to buy them in winter or in autumn because they were not locally produced. So that has always had a great importance for me in my bringing up, and it's something that I'm still doing today. So I'm quite strict in that sense. And yes, but I can see that sometimes it's a bit limiting because, of course, after 4 months of eating just beetroots or cabbage, you kind of get tired of that. But it also, but it also brings some creativity because, of course, you have more or less the same ingredients for a couple of months because the season only is supposed to produce only that. But that is also what brings creativity into cooking and into the kitchen, because you find new ways and alternative ways of putting that on the table, especially when you're also feeding kids that might be a bit picky sometimes. So in terms of seasonality, I think it's often a moral principle more than a practical one, I must say. But the basic of this was that, of course, cooking what's locally produced and in season, it's also more affordable for people, for families, instead of trying to have everything on the table in any month of the year. So that's why there is a calendar, and you're supposed to know more or less when different fruits and vegetables are available. And this is also where the anti-waste dimension comes in, and the anti-waste was one of the principles that were recognized by UNESCO as well. And so this is where the anti-waste comes in, because lots of iconic dishes exist to use up what's in season before it spoils.
Exactly. That's a principle that goes back to the famous cucina povera, the quote unquote poor cuisine, that nobody wanted to waste any type of food. So now we're bringing it back under the name of UNESCO. And I mean, it's just something extremely, extremely important. So we could clearly see that food plays an enormous role, especially in the identity, not just of Italians in Italy, but of Italians living abroad as well. So I just wanted to ask, just to tie this back into roots tourism. Roots tourism has, in the past year or two, has become increasingly more popular. So I guess I'll ask this to Ricardo, what exactly is roots tourism?
I will give you a double answer. I mean, the most objective answer is that basically roots tourism is a travel to rediscover the places of your ancestors. But the second answer, I think, is the most proper one. It is an inner experience. Okay. because roots tourism is not only visiting, is not only seeing things, is be part of something that the story of your life, the story of your parents, of your grandparents, is an experience that is beyond the tangible, what you see with your eyes. And I think that this is the reason why it is becoming increasingly popular, because the identity now is, I mean, with the new generations, is becoming something that is more and more important. And I mean, in Italy, when you are, I mean, I saw this especially in Italian Americans, because I saw in the Italian Americans this, let me say, proudness of being of Italian origins. And I've seen that the tradition of Italy are really, 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 that is something that is very important for Italian Americans. And it is not only visiting, I repeat, is breathing a story and your personal story. And we always say with Viola, we, let me say, allow to organize the personalized travels, and there is nothing that is more personalized than a travel that brings you to your personal story.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned, Riccardo, Italian Americans, and the fact that we're so proud to be Italian. And oftentimes you'll speak to Italian Americans and say, "Hey, you know, talk about Italy. Have you ever been to Italy? This and that." No, but I would love to go. That's always the answer. So I guess this question could be geared towards Sylvia. Why do you think so many Italian Americans are indeed very much proud of their culture? Even apart from obviously food we just talked about, but why are they so proud, and why are they so interested in tracing their roots to Italy today?
Well, it's a great question, because I think everyone knows Italy is a fascinating culture beyond the food, the history, the art, its impact today, the fashion of the cars, the design, the architecture. There's so much, and there's something for everyone. And I think there's few cultures in the world that could say that. And I think there's, of course, that aspect of wanting to explore your roots and your identity. It is a very difficult thing at times for people in other countries to understand. But as you know, Robert, it's how Americans identify. They identify with their heritage, and in many cases, they haven't visited the place of origin of their ancestors. And so, I think it's a topic that hits home with many that have, in their last names or even in their first names these beautiful Italian names, and long to want to visit. And this is providing a very new experience, and we all know that experiences as a whole are definitely on the rise as far as entertainment is concerned. And so what I loved about what CulturaPath set out to do is that it is combining the two aspects as another growing trend over the past 5 years or so has been, the search for someone's ancestry, and, discovering your roots and where exactly your ancestors were born, right? And so what do you do with that information? Well, now there's CulturaPaths that can actually take that information and curate a beautiful trip to those same, origins where your ancestors, once lived. And that's what's unique about this. And I think it makes it more tangible because of the fact that for years, to your point, the conversations that you and I have, I know I have so many friends that still haven't been and long to go, or when they do go and they're planning a trip on their own and they're visiting major cities, because Italy is overwhelming. There's so much to do and see. Then they always come back and say to me, "Oh, well, but next time I want to go visit the hometown where my great grandparents were born or my grandparents came from," because they
Exactly.
take the big cities first.
Yes, exactly. So I know you've taken your family to Italy, your kids, and so on and so forth. So, like, what are people usually hoping to find when they visit their ancestral towns, at least in your experience, Sylvia?
I think they're longing to see exactly the town that their grandparents or great grandparents were born, right? And it just draws an instant connection with them. And it's something that I think could tie them together. Like I said, they visit the major cities, but it's the sense of looking for their identity. And the last thing I'll say is, yes, I take my children every year, traveled all over the country. But the trips that always stick out the most to my kids, which are now second generation, is the times we visited the two hometowns from where their three grandparents were born. And so it does mean something, especially as the generations go by.
Yes, exactly. And then it's something that they'll never forget. Ricardo, did you want to add something as well too?
Yes, because sometimes what people hope, in the end, they get most. They get more because, for example, when you visit your hometown, sometimes you can visit also the church where your grandmother and your grandfather get married, or you can see the house where they lived. Sometimes you always see also the name of your family in the doorbell, or sometimes you find the sign of the shop with the name of your family. These kind of things are very tangible and are the small things that are very emotional. Obviously, sometimes, if possible, you can also meet some parents that are alive, some relatives, and this is again very emotional. And happens sometimes that you receive some surprises. For example, one person found out when arrived in Italy that his family was owner of a castle. They were noble. Uh, Obviously, it's not a promise to people to come to Italy that everyone is noble or owner of a castle, but it happened. Or it happened that he discovered that, for example, this person was visiting a vineyard because this wine shop had the same name of him, and he discovered that his family actually was the owner. Some relatives of him were owners of this vineyard and this wine shop, and these are kind of surprises that are sometimes are real. You come to Italy and you find
Yes.
these kind of things.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Interesting. That would have been cool if, you go back to Italy and you find out that your relatives own a castle. I wouldn't mind that. Viola, did you want to add something as well, given the fact that you live abroad, your kids were born abroad? I'm assuming you brought them back to your hometown. So what do you
For
say?
me, what's really also important to highlight more, it was about something that Silvia mentioned. The fact that the first time that sometimes people come to visit Italy, they visit the main cities, the main touristic locations. While this kind of tourism, roots tourism, it's actually helping spread a bit better touristic flows around the country. We know that today some cities, some regions in Italy, especially during certain seasons, are really overcrowded, and even just the tourist experience can be quite overwhelming and a disaster for the tourist and for the local people that live there. And roots tourism actually helps spread a bit more tourists around Italy, because we know that these people that migrated most of the times were not from the main cities, but they were coming from the countryside. And today's these villages can be not completely empty. There are some people that still live there, but you can find villages that are almost abandoned. So choosing to travel in this way and exploring different paths that are not just the most touristic ones also brings lots of benefit to you for your own experience, but also to the country itself.
It does, 100%. I can even speak from a personal point of view. My first time in Italy and my first time meeting my relatives that are there in Molise. In fact, I still keep in contact with them on a regular basis. It's just totally life-changing and very much enriching as well. And I'm quite sure that a lot of Italian Americans could relate to that, or maybe are longing for that. So for someone who has always wanted to discover their Italian roots but doesn't know exactly where to begin, what would you recommend? I guess we could ask that to Viola, and then we could pass it off to Ricardo as well, if you both kind of want to say something.
Well, first thing is to come visit our website, of course. Side. No, joke aside, the thing, what they can start do is trying. The first thing is really start inquiring with living relatives if anyone has any recollection, any memory, or any documents, even of those who actually left Italy. So the part of the family that left Italy when they arrived to the States. Did they have any birth certificate? And if they don't have the birth certificate, do they still remember where they were born, the exact year, and any kind of details that they can provide can be useful. But we've actually found out that even if you don't have anything, any of these documents, we were actually able to find some of these information about where a person was born in Italy with the information that we collected from the person about of the time when the relative once arrived to the States had actually where did he live, where did he get married, where was he buried in the end. So with this information of the portion of life that the people lived in the States, we are sometimes able to retrieve the information of when they actually left. So the birth town, and then with the birth town, the birth year, the birth certificate, sometimes the marriage license, sometimes even the address. So yes, don't think that everything is lost if you don't have any kind of document from Italy, because there are cases where you can still manage to retrieve information with the details and the information that you have of your grandparent or great grandparent of his life in the States.
Right. And you mentioned for a few seconds your website, which is an extremely important place to begin. Maybe I'll let Ricardo talk a little bit about that, because the listeners may want to learn more about CulturaPaths. In fact, I could put all the information also in the show notes too when we're done. But Ricardo, where can listeners learn more about CulturaPaths?
First of all, on our website, on our social network pages, we have active newsletters on which we provide contents not only related to travels, but in general of Italian culture, about immigration. We also did, because Viola had the contact of this museum in Veneto, we did this collaboration during the Olympics. But I would like Viola to explain better what we did with that museum, because it is something that is very interesting. But before going to Viola, I want to add something on the part of the expectations. And one thing that I would like to communicate is that even if some of the documentation are not available digitally, is because some of the archives are still in the churches or in the municipalities, and sometimes the genealogists need to go physically to hunt for the documentations that are not even written in Italian. Sometimes are in Latin or in Volgare, and there is also this work of translations that is very interesting. But I would like to involve Viola in this thing, because I would like that she tells you the story of that museum, and it is very interesting.
Yes, so during the Olympic Games, I contacted this ethnographic museum in Belluno, in Veneto, and I knew about them because my father-in-law had donated them. How do you call it? A slate, a snow slate. Yes, that are a very specific shape. It was something really unusual. So we had a contact of the museum curator, and I got in touch with her, and I managed to do a newsletter with her, and also to mention a podcast that they had created, and that told very interesting stories about local ways of exploiting snow, snow as a transport, as it was used to transport construction material, but also as it was part of kids' games, and how snow is sadly slowly disappearing from the mountains. And it was really, really emotional. The podcast, it's in Italian, but I can give you the link to listen to it. And it's a very interesting story. But if you go to our website, which is www.culturapath.com, you can subscribe to our newsletter, or you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to get in touch with us, there's a form, a very basic form on the website, and where we just ask you if you have already information about your family, and if you would like to have more information about genealogical research or the trip planning, or both of those things. And we reply to emails usually in 24 hours, so you can get in touch with us whenever you're ready.
Very good, very good. So for anybody who's listening right now, check out that website. Even if you have just the smallest curiosity about figuring out your roots or discovering your roots or learning more, just go check it out. They're Viola and Riccardo are very quick at responding. I know as Americans, as Italian Americans, we're used to quick. They're very quick. They do a great job. So go check it out. And I'll have the website linked in the description, and also the social media links in the description as well too. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I thought this was a very fun conversation, a great conversation we had. And I also hope the listeners as well too enjoyed this. I kind of want to leave the floor to everybody to give your final remarks before we say ciao to each other. So Silvia, if you'd like to
Sure.
say something.
Thank you so much, Robert, for the opportunity. For the listeners, please follow CulturaPaths, and also follow me at Renaissance Minds. Happy to be a liaison, and happy to work with you all on really promoting the culture and the phenomenal work that Riccardo and Viola are doing here from the US. Thank you.
Awesome. Riccardo?
Thanks, Robert, for hosting us. It was a real pleasure. I would like to say that for us, CulturaPaths is also a mission, because we really think that reconnecting these two Italies, okay, one that is here and one that is abroad, is something that is really valuable. So thank you for giving us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Viola, what about you?
Grazie, intanto grazie mille Robert per averci ospitati. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
It was a real pleasure. And yes, as Riccardo was saying, this is kind of a mission for us. CulturaPath, it's the expression of our values. And for having worked so many years in tourism and having traveled a lot, I know how much the real authenticity matters when you travel, especially when you do this kind of really, really personal and tailor-made trips. And so we really embrace the values of a slower travel, a better experience, and a more authentic one.
Very good. I had a great time speaking with everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to this episode. Again, check out their website. If you just have the slightest bit of curiosity, go check it out. And again, thank you very much. So grazie mille a tutti.
Grazie.
Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stories of authentic Italian cuisine. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insights and interviews. Also, feel free to reach out with your thoughts or questions on our social media channels at Stop Italian Sounding, or on our website, stopitasounding.com. Grazie a tutti e alla prossima.